Welcome to the Buddy Book Club, and thanks for tuning in. I'm here with my good buddy Keith to break down some bestsellers as always. This time around, we're taking a detour to the nonfiction side of the library and checking out a political/financial thriller, I guess. I don't know.
No, you said that wrong. It's financial.
Oh,
High finance.
High finance.
Yeah, thank you. There we go.
Well, the finance book we're discussing here is Red Notice, a true story of high finance, murder, and one man's fight for justice. This was chosen based on a listener recommendation. If you'd like to recommend a book for us to read or reach out to us about any past episodes, you can visit our website, buddybookclub.com, slide into our DMs on Twitter and Instagram, Buddy Book Club Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes and Spotify, so please download and subscribe. Now that we got that out of the way, Privyet, Comrade Keith.
Another Russian book. I feel like we're big into Russia.
Yeah, something about it. Big into Russia and big into torture, which we'll get to later.
True,
but,
this is true.
Red Notice is basically the story of Bill Browder, the grandson of the head of the American Communist Party, who brings capitalism to Russia. Hilarity ensues. Is that accurate?
I don't know if hilarity ensues, but totally, yeah.
Yeah. So that's generally the story. It's a decently long book. We both listened to this one, which I enjoyed. The audiobook I enjoyed here. I think the guy who did it was pretty good at like mixing accents in, which could be difficult.
There's nothing worse than, and we'll get to this later, but Tom Hanks played, what's that movie? The
Terminal?
The Terminal? Oh my God, that movie is terrible. It has really high ratings too, but I just can't handle the Russian accent.
I actually found it to be quite nice. It was whimsical.
It was.
All right, well, we're not here to talk about The Terminal. We're here to talk about Red Notice. First, we like to discuss libation, because, you know, we need to have a little something in our system while we're discussing a book, especially one that's 16 hours long. I feel like vodka just has to be the name of the game.
It has to be done. Yeah, it has to.
And vodka name is diminutive for the Slavic word for water, so I guess Russians must like it quite a bit, considering they just call it water. But it's supposed to be drank neat, so I'm going to have just a little chilled vodka. I'm also going to have a beer, but maybe a sidecar, if you will.
I like that.
You're going with a coffee, as always.
Yeah, it's only noon here in West Coast time, so might be a little bit early for the kids, but
I do think this is a good time to discuss your created drink, though, Kovo, which is a coffee vodka, correct?
TM, yeah. Yeah, it's, I mean, the thing is, most people don't like it because they drink coffee so often, but I never drink coffee, or I rarely drink coffee, and maybe once a week. And so you don't really, coffee is so bitter to me that you don't taste the vodka. So it's like the best of both worlds. You get a really big boost, and you don't taste the vodka at all. So it just tastes like a good drink. I like it hot. So you just have a hot coffee. If you want to put a little cream in there, get a little fancy in there, you can do that too. And then you throw some vodka in there. It's the ultimate pregame drink. TM, taking investors. So hit us up on Buddy Book Club podcast at gmail.com if you're looking for investment in as well.
Well, you were basically ahead of the espresso martini. I mean, you like it hot, but
right?
That's pretty much the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Talking about Red Notice, do you have a favorite scene? This is a very long book, and I feel like it comes in 3 parts. It's kind of like the first one, which is like him building up his company and like getting involved in Russia, and the second part, which is kind of the downfall a little bit, you know, when the market crashes and things start to get tightened up on his company and the individuals, and then the third part, which is the whole Sergey, the whole Sergey part. So out of those 3, I guess, I think we're both going to agree that the first part's the best, but did you have a specific scene or area of the book you like the most?
I agree. I think the beginning part where he's kind of building up the company, I don't know if you've read Shoe Dog, but I kind of labeled that the Shoe Dog-esque area. And what I really loved about this Browder dude is that everything he did was out of spite, which, you know, as someone, I'm a big spite guy. And he was like, you know what, I'm going to become a capitalist out of spite. And then he went to college, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to transfer to a better school. And he just kept on doing everything out of spite. And I was like, I like this a lot. And the reason that basically, it sounded like he would have been satisfied to stick with his company and that he was currently doing all the dealings in Russia with if they had just like given him the credit but instead they didn't. And he's like, all right, fuck these dudes. And he like out of spite started his own company. So everything he did was from that part. I love the build up. I like that. It was very Shoe Dog-esque, where if you haven't read that, it's like the Nike founder basically did the same thing. Like he had a pretty good relationship with I think it was a Japanese company.
Yeah, I think it was Tiger Shoes or something like that.
Yeah, they like screwed him out of like a deal, and he's like, all right, I'll just start my own company. And then Nike became, and then you never heard of that other company anymore. So yeah, pretty funny. I loved it.
Okay.
What about you?
Yeah, I liked within that first part. I liked the Poland scene, kind of when he's starting to get into these emerging markets, and it was a consulting gig that he was in before he decided to start the fund. And it was like right after the Berlin Wall, when the government was privatizing state-owned companies and selling shares at absurdly low values. But in more of an anecdotal story was just him, you know, in the shitty hotel room with a tiny little bed that's just a shoebox, and his like Russian buddy driving him around and just like wanting to get or Polish buddy, excuse me, like just wanting to get the fuck out of there. But at the same time then realizing, it was when he bought his first stock. So he was realizing, oh my God, like there's a lot of opportunity here, and this is Poland, and maybe I should take this to Russia, considering my grandfather was such a commie that I should be such a capitalist. Out of spite.
Out of spite, which we love.
All right, cool. Let's get stock up, stock down. Stock up. I mean, talk about stock up. This is the actual book about stocks. But what did you have for stock up in this one?
Receiving bad news, stock up. So
Okay.
This is a common theme in the book, and I think I'm going to get into this a little bit later as well. But every time he received bad news, he kind of painted the picture as like this. So I was at my 5-star hotel in Greece that cost $5,000 a night, relaxing for the first time. Peered out at my like 100-foot yacht. But then I received a call about bad news of like investments not working out. I always have sympathy for you. Every single time you receive bad news, he's like, I was at a Michelin star restaurant. I didn't really want to go there because I wasn't feeling great. I'm like, bro, come on. Like, this isn't like how you like set up a bad news story.
Yeah, he name drops the restaurant by name. He's like, oh, it's one of those 18 courses, going to take 3.5 hours. Oh, like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I just want to not be here. It's like, okay, relax. And I was wondering how long it would take us to get into the amount that he talks about the wealth around him or like the things he was experiencing. So I'm glad it didn't take very long because it was a big problem for me.
Yeah, it was a good way to receive bad news when you're, sleeping in your $5,000 a night suite. Doesn't seem that bad. I wasn't really crying for him at that point. It didn't really set it up very well.
Also, all the calls started with, Bill, I have some bad news.
Yeah.
Bill, something's going wrong in the firm.
Yeah.
My stock up, public speaking. Normally, not something people are really jazzed about, or even when you see one, it's like, okay, that was fine. But old Billy B here, he's a regular old Clarence Darrow. His prose is so well received, he often brings listeners to tears. He can barely get a full thought out before everyone gives him a standing ovation. He's like Cartman addressing the House about stem cell research in the episode where Kenny dies. Just like sings heat of the moment and everyone's clapping and crying. So that's Billy B whenever he gets up in front of a crowd. He goes out of his way to make sure everyone knows that Harvard business students are crying, random members of the House and Senate are putting down their Blackberries to start weeping. It's amazing. This guy is just one of the best public speakers I've ever seen.
I love that you have that because my literally next stock up is making people cry. Stock up. Everywhere Bill Browder goes.
Yeah.
People are just weeping in the streets.
Well, I actually watched, and by the way, if you don't want to watch this or read this book, listen to this book, however you want to consume it, you can just listen to Bill Browder's TED Talk. He goes to like TEDx Berlin.
I watched that too. Wow, we're in sync right now.
Nice.
Let's go.
Yeah. 15 minutes, it's pretty much the entire story. And he only names drops like a couple places he's staying like once or twice in the 15 minutes.
Although he did in that TED Talk, he's like, by the end of this talk, you'll know why Putin hates me the most. But the end of it, I'm like, why does he hate him? Like, I would have to read the book to know it.
Putin doesn't give a fuck, bro. Like, I know it's a big deal. Like, it's cool that he said your name, but relax. I'm like, we'll get more into that later. So stock up, I guess we covered your making people cry. I didn't cry when I listened to the TED Talk, by the way. And I like to cry here and there. Financial terms, that's another one of my stock ups. We just love to gamble here, both you and I. We love to talk about football gambling. I love gambling terms, with teasers, parlays, all sorts of good stuff you can get in. You know, dogs, those are fun, betting on a dog. But 10-bagger, that might be the best I've heard yet. And a 10-bagger, he explains in the book, is when you hit a stock for 10x. So you buy it for $1,
Ooh,
and now it's worth
like
$10.
that.
So you hit a 10-bagger. And then I thought about if I'd ever hit a 10-bagger. And I think I did with Tesla. And I felt really good about myself. I felt so good. I went to this sit-down restaurant down the street here. Let me explain. It's kind of the Ritz-Carlton, you know?
Yeah, go on.
I was there with my Russian bride.
She was a model.
She was a model, and she was also head of UNICEF. This fucking guy. But yeah, so the financial terms, he drops them throughout. I love that stuff. So immersion markets, why not? What else you got for stock up?
Stock up white giraffes. I don't know if you're familiar with these. You could get a quick Google search. They're pretty majestic.
Giraffe?
Yeah, I don't know if they're albino. I mean, they're pretty majestic. I think those are pretty cool. It's also funny that he was dating one.
What?
Yeah, so he started dating Elena, and the way he described her beauty was a flawless porcelain white skin and a long regal neck. Are you turned on as much as I was after reading that? I don't know, but the long regal neck and porcelain white skin, I mean, woo, yeah, hot in the streets.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, you know, everyone's into their own thing, and I respect that everyone, you know, can yuck. No one's going to yuck anyone else's yum, but being interested really in someone's long neck.
What does regal mean, by the way?
Regal means like royal, right? Well, I know in some like African tribes they use those like neck extenders because that's a big thing.
Oh, you think he's into that?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe she had an extended.
I'm not hating there, but I also thought it was just the imagery was funny to me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, also maybe it's a cultural thing. Like, you know, ancient China, they used to do the foot binding, and that's disgusting. So, and just torturous. So.
Whoa, get your ethnocentrism out of here, kid. I don't want to hear it.
Did you have anything else for stock up?
One other one, women bad guys, stock up.
Ooh.
It was really refreshing, and this is a true story, but it was refreshing to see some bad women bad guys. This is true equality when you start to see bad guys.
Where were the
both men and
women bad?
So the judge that basically
gotcha.
refused to do anything, she was a woman, and then
for
the doctor
Magnitsky.
that covered, and then the doctor that covered everything up was a woman. I just really liked that. I appreciated that. You know, in Russia, I feel like that's where the true equality is coming from. It sounds like so. Stock up.
Well, Russians. I mean, this book is not good for Russia, that's for sure. But one thing about Russia and communism in general is they really kind of throw sexism out the window for the most part. So, you know, everyone's a comrade. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's true.
My last stock up was the Buddy Book Club itself. You know? Yeah, stock up for us because at the end of the book, Bill Browder basically says the one thing you can do to help keep me alive is to talk about this story and share it with people. So what else are we doing here besides talking about his story and sharing it with people? So fuck you, Putin. We're on Billy Browder's side.
Yeah.
I forgot Sergey. So did Bill. But
too soon. Too soon.
Bill would be like, oh, like the day I heard Sergey died was the most traumatic day. Like, what a traumatic day for me. I had to put down my gold fork and, you know, get in my Rolls Royce, and I had to go and fight for Sergey because if I wouldn't do it, who would? It's like, Jesus, dude.
I feel bad because we're treating this like a fiction book, but it's actually real life. But you got to do the same critical eye that you do on the fiction. So, but it is what it is.
Of course. Plus, we like take things lightly. I'm sorry, but that's just that's what we're doing here, anyways. I mean, I'll talk shit about Billy Browder. I'm not going to talk shit about Sergey, for the most part.
I'm not talking shit about Putin, apparently.
Oh, yeah. You know. We got to stay away from that. We don't want to get canceled.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to stock down. What'd you have for stock down?
Superiority complex, stock down. When he went to Poland, as you mentioned, he was like, I'm so intimidated. I'm going to this new country. I have to lead this whole operation. Like, bro, you're a Stanford MBA. You're at like one of the most prestigious consulting firms. You're going to a place that doesn't have heat, that still has horse and buggies. I mean, like, I feel that you have some sort of superiority over these people when you go in. If this dude doesn't have confidence with that, where does confidence come from? Like, how does anyone have confidence? Like, that's where you should have some sort of, I'm going to fucking go in here and, like, tell these people it's good. But he didn't have any of that. I don't know. What'd you think of that?
I mostly just didn't like how he disrespected the food.
Somehow it's always
People were
like
like,
the food
oh,
here.
they're eating brown stew for dinner. I could barely, horse liver, I could barely even choke it down. It's like, get involved in another country, man. Immerse yourself. Relax, all right? Poland's got a lot
I can
to
be on
offer.
his side a little bit there. I mean,
Poland's got dumplings. They got dumplings, man. Just go find some dumplings. What else do you need? You got pierogies. Go eat some pierogies.
fair enough.
Don't complain to me, Bill, okay? I don't want to hear it. Stuck down for me, oligarchies / governments on the whole. The oligarchies, for that part, is like handful of people controlling the wealth of a nation equals bad for the most, for the most part. And, we kind of have that here, except it's like corporations instead. We're soon going to be a corporation-controlled world, and we don't want to get into government talk, but yeah, that's pretty fucked up. Also, just the slow moving and bureaucratic nature of democracy. When Bill Browder actually tries to get stuff done here, it's like, oh yeah, we'll do it. It takes a couple weeks. Everything goes a little slow. It takes a couple months. Now it's an election year. And since both sides agree on it, it can't get done because we only want to talk about stuff that people disagree on. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with governments? Just, it seems pretty cut and dry. And also, Bill's genius idea, which is, hey, instead of like going after the crooks in their own country, let's just go after their wallets and their visas. Seems pretty straightforward to me. And hey, I appreciate that he went for that and like it worked out. But also, like, what the fuck, America? Why aren't we already on top of that? Why would you just like give crooks visas so they can spend their money in the United States and just keep it in the United States? It was bonkers to me that this was even a thing. But hey, you know what? You just can't trust governments. That's really it at the end of the day.
He wasn't like criticizing one party or the other. He just was like, these politicians helped me, and these people didn't. And both sides he was criticizing. It didn't matter like his political affiliation or anything like that, which is really what it should always be. I don't give a shit what party you're at. I just want this to get done.
Yeah,
that's it.
Totally. I mean, he made John McCain seem like a wonderful person, and I think John McCain is a wonderful person. I've no questions. Well,
rest in peace, kid.
R.I.P. John Kerry, not so much, but hey, the guy kind of seems like a dick anyways, so I'm not really a big John. And I'm from Massachusetts, so hey, I can say that shit. Stock down. What else you got?
Light dinner conversation. Stock down. On his second date, he's like, yeah, the second date didn't go that well. We didn't really get into much serious conversations. He starts off the date immediately talking about politics and oligarchies and Russia and stuff like that. So interesting strategery there, starting off the date with that. And then he keeps on talking about how, like, after that, like, everything was downhill. We didn't get to any subjects or anything like that, except that her father died tragically of a heart attack.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what? This is a second date where he's like, we didn't really get into much serious stuff. Like, what is more serious than that? Like, holy shit. And the way then he ends up getting her is by sending her a book that's, like, about grieving your lost ones and sending that to her, and that's how he basically lands her. I'm like, holy shit, I've been doing the whole dating thing wrong? I'm usually, like, second date, like, pretty nervous, talking about the lightest stuff ever. He's just going politics, shitting on her home country, and death, heart attacks.
Yeah, I forgot that stock up really should have been using a loved one's death as advantage to get in their pants.
Or that, yes.
Like, use someone's death, find out who's important in their life that died, and then use that as leverage to get in their pants. It's pretty much the Bill Browder method. That's what I learned.
I mean, what we can do too, though, with Buddy Book Club is like we can start to use the books that we're reading as like, hey, I really thought about this book would mean a lot to you, and send it to people, because that's what he basically did, right? Just found a book.
Yeah, I liked this book, but I don't think I'd be sending it to anyone.
No. I'm saying all the books we read, someone just tells us some offhand story, and we just say, hey, I thought about you when I was reading this book, and send it to him. I feel like it's a good pickup line. It worked. So
yeah, someone's like, hey, I found a dead body in the woods when I was a kid, and it traumatized me for life. It's like, here's Stephen King's The Body. I hope you enjoy it. It might bring back some of your childhood trauma. Also, to tie into your story, granted, I don't know when I was going to talk about this, but I don't want to forget it. When he was married to his first wife and like the marriage was on the rocks, he said they went on vacation to kind of clear things up and just to get away.
Was it a 5-star hotel?
It sure was. He talked about the resort, 5-star hotel. They went out to a beautiful dinner together, and he was talking about how the relationship he feel like had turned for the better. Like things were going really well because he was able to sit there and talk about Russia the whole time. The only problem was that his wife kept wanting to talk about their son which he was just like not into. He just wanted to talk about what was happening in Russia. I was like, bro, you just slid that in there? He was like, well, she kept bringing up our kid, but like other than that, she listened to my Russia stuff. So the relationship was going really well. I was like, wow, you are a self-centered prick.
The dude does go back every weekend from Moscow. I respected that. Or at least he said he did.
He said that, but then it was also, was he still doing that when he had his second wife? It was kind of like something he just
his second wife
said.
lived in England.
So he was going back there anyways, and he also visited his first wife or his kid. Whatever. I'm not saying he's a guy's a bad dad. I'm just saying he wanted to talk about Russia all the time, and people don't want to listen to Russia. Like, your wife doesn't care about Russia. Simple as that. Stock down for me, corruption. It just didn't actually. I'm going to tie corruption and torture into this.
What's the corruption selling at right now? We've had a lot been buying a lot of torture. So if you're going to think that stock down now, that could be a story. But corruption, I don't think has ever been really had much of a stock price.
Yeah, well, I'm selling torture because it definitely didn't work in this situation. The whole torture of Sergei was what led to the Magnitsky Act. So it kind of screwed the Russians over. Maybe if they didn't torture the guy, just like gave him a toilet, didn't make him freeze to death, and then gave him a doctor, it would have been okay. But instead they went a little too far. And now we got the Magnitsky Act, which has been used, I guess, supposedly in Ukraine, which is interesting.
I mean, the big issue I had with it is that if you're Russian and you want to really cover all this shit up, why would you release the diary that Sergei was writing? Like, clean it up, Russia. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, there was a lot of weird stuff and he went kind of day by day with the Sergei thing, like what Sergei's experiences were in prison.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming they just must have got that from the diary, right? Because how else would you know?
At the end of it, they're like, luckily, we got Sergei's diary, which outlined every single thing he did. He kept like meticulous day-to-day journal. And I'm like, well, why would you ever release that if you wanted to cover this stuff up? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. And also,
it didn't make any sense.
It kind of ties back to the thing that's going on recently. Who's the guy, Alexei, what's that guy's name? The Russian, like, opposition.
What?
No. The Russian opposition guy who's now in prison, and they tried to murder like a couple times through poison. And then
I know you're talking about, but
going
I'm not
on
sure
a hunger strike. But it kind of mirrors that, where it's like, okay, you're letting all of this information out, so you should probably either not let any information out and just murder people, or don't imprison them and let all the information out. It's a weird way that they're going about it.
I feel like we've had multiple discussions about how to run a dictatorship, and we got to be, they got to be better at this. That's what the fact of the matter is.
Autocracy 101. We can teach you.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like it was pretty obvious, but to me,
especially when you have someone like Stalin who like ran your country for years. So do what Stalin did.
Weren't these dudes like 20 years ago the secret police coming in rounding people up? Like I feel like you should kind of have a little bit more weariness than what they currently have, like a lot of these Russians have.
Yeah, also maybe dying for your principles didn't really work out for the most part. All right, well, what did you love about the book?
Felt like a combination of Shoe Dog and Too Big to Fail, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of Too Big to Fail, because when I get to my hates, I'll get into that. But
it's Too Big to Fail, the Enron one?
It was the 2008 like stock market. Oh,
just the financial crisis.
Again, it was falling around like all the CEOs of the banks, which basically was sympathizing with them, which, again, we'll get into my hates was also. But I already said Browder, super spite-driven. You love to see that. I also think that I think the story was interesting. Like, I brought it up, a couple of times. Like, it's dinner party kind of book where, like, and a lot of lawyers talk about it. A lot of people are into politics can know about this. So I thought it was like, I feel like I'm getting smarter kind of reading this type of book. So that was also something I really liked about it. I think, too, if you get done with a book and you're looking into it more, or a nonfiction story and you're looking into it more, like anytime I see some sort of movie that's based on true story, I always deep dive into like what actually happened. Like U-571, completely accurate.
Oh God, no. I mean, I love submarine movies, but
no discrepancies between the movie and the actual real life. Like same thing with like Argo.
Hold on. What?
Sorry, I probably should have used a little more sarcasm on that U-571.
Okay, yeah, that's like that did not happen. None of that happened. But Argo is the same way.
No, I think Argo actually. I don't know. I have to look into Argo, but I remember like getting done with Argo and just like being like, all right, I got to read this whole story.
Yeah, that's a good thing about those books and movies is if it hits you in the right way, you just immediately want to start Googling the story.
So yeah, I looked at like the YouTube videos. We looked at the TED Talk. Like that's how you know it's a good book. You're like still interested after you get done with it. Yeah. And then the other thing was it just seemed real. It seemed like, even though sometimes it dragged, it just seemed real. The one thing I need to call out though that wasn't real at all, and there's definitely some cover up here.
Okay.
All these companies are hiding their funding, and there's some sort of corruption going on, which is basically hurting our profits, right? And they're just trying to figure out like, how do we find this out? They pull up to a stop at a at a light, and they're selling CDs, and a guy just walks up and says, "Oh, are you looking for all the transactions of this one company? I have them." And they're like, "Oh my god, this is amazing! What luck!" Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, fucking right.
You call bullshit?
Definitely hacked. Oh, he hacked something or something. He got the illegal means. There's no way some guy walked up to me in the street who's selling faked CDs and fake DVDs is. Oh, I also have these corporate filings that that you're looking for. Like, what? That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever read.
He said, "What do you got, kid?" He's like, I got the full catalog of Mel Gibson movies. He's like, "You got What Women Want in there?" He's like, "Damn right I do. It's in HD." He's like, "What about the microtransactions of all the Russian companies?" He goes, "Oh, I happen to have that too. How much do you want?" $5. Perfect. It's like, it seems a little too good to be true.
Yeah, other than that, it seemed very true. What about you for Loves?
I mean, I really just love the first third of the book. You've gone over it, how it's like Shoe Dog or whatnot, which also I didn't get through. I got through the first third of it or something like that. But
I really like Shoe Dog. You must just not like nonfiction.
I think my loan ended with a library. So, but I'll go back. It's one of those things.
It's a great audiobook too.
Yeah. I like nonfiction. My nonfictions are mostly like historical nonfiction. So,
okay.
And I thought that kind of dragged too, which is that's why I said I love the first third of this book. I mean, working for Robert Maxwell, the Solomon Brothers stories, him trying to find a desk and like people not really believing in him. It just was really similar to me to the How I Built This podcast, which is an NPR show hosted by Guy Raz, which is awesome. But those are like an hour and a half long, maybe. And it's just an interesting way to see how companies were built, especially big ones. And I thought this was a really interesting emerging markets story, which really I didn't have any idea what emerging markets were. I think if you asked me, I'd be like, well, it's like markets that are emerging. but seeing it happen in real time, especially considering it was in the mid 90s where like we were alive for, it was like, wait, you could just buy these companies, like the countries were valuing them for so much less that you just had to go in there. I mean, the Russian part, when they were giving vouchers away to every citizen for like a piece of a company, and instead they were like, I'll trade you this for a shot of vodka. And the whole story about how it was getting compiled, and then there was brokers who were compiling that. It was crazy, and it was a Wild West. It reminded me a lot of like the marijuana stuff going on these days, where like banks won't take checks and stuff, so you have to go in with cash, and they have all these secret bodyguards. It's just really interesting. I really enjoyed the first third of the book. The Sergey stuff was definitely interesting, and I think that was very important. We're not trying to make light of that, but it just went on for way too long. And I would have liked it more if it was more of like an action thriller kind of thing with like more of Sergey's storyline, or like having it done from his perspective. It didn't all have to be from Browder's perspective. So I really like that stuff.
Agreed. I think, we both kind of like the entrepreneurial spirit part, but it did seem to drag at the end there. I guess getting into the hate side, though.
Yeah, let's hate.
Dragged at the end was number one. The other thing, too, is that investing, it's a zero-sum game, right? Like,
I don't know what that means.
There's like a loser and a winner. There's not it comes out to zero at the end of the day. Gotcha. So, like, someone that sold it is theoretically losing money if it goes up. And the other way around, if you buy it and it goes down, then there's no inherent value added to the world by selling stocks.
When he was talking about the stuff I was talking about earlier with the Russian people like trading vodka away for like their share, all I read throughout this whole book was like he made his money off the backs of all these Russian people, like the Russian citizens who were poor and didn't know what the fuck was going on, and they just went and bought all this stuff that was previously state owned. And now anyone can do it. And I get that, like, oh, sure, Russian people could have done it themselves. But then you have rich, highly educated people coming in and pretty much pillaging their country from them. So that wasn't so hot.
It's just hard to sympathize with all these multi-millionaires investing in, and them potentially losing money. This is like your money that you're saying, hey, I can put it in here and I can win it or lose it, but you're already a multimillionaire. You're not losing your fucking back. You're not losing your kid's college fund. You're probably losing your second yacht. So it really was hard to sympathize when things started to like go awry for them. Also, the reason the stock prices and the shares were so cheap is because that's built in the Russian corruption and the upheaval of the government is built into the share price. That is the whole point. The reason why it was such a risky play is because you don't know what's going to happen there. That's why he could get a deal on it. Like, that's what kind of blows my mind is like, yeah, there's corruption and there's government upheaval. That's what you're investing in. You're like, so when it started to happen, they're like, how could this happen? It's like, that's why you got a deal on the shares. It wasn't because like you're the smartest person ever. Everyone probably knew that. But he was willing to take the risk.
It's because the government system is so shaky and it's just getting set up that, the ruble might drop to a penny on a dollar, or whatever you'd say,
Right.
But
it's like investing in a startup and then being like, no, the startup's not doing well. This is bullshit. Like, I should have done well. It's like, no, you took the risk on, buying those shares.
I definitely didn't feel bad for them.
No. He kept on being like, Russia's the most corrupt place ever. But you won't believe what happened next. And it's like, something corrupt happened? They're like, something corrupt happened. And he kept on saying that like 5 times in a row. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not surprised
you won't
at all.
Believe it. The Russians have come and they're taking our money. What? Oh my God. Hold on. Let me take this silver spoon out of my mouth. My God, I'm getting in my Maserati right now. And then I'm flying to a private jet over there. And I'm going to figure this out. We're going to lose all of our money. So one of the things I hated, and we've been talking about this a little bit, but it was just Bill Browder's hubris. It really came through. He thought he could transform Russian capitalism. He was like, this market's pretty fucked up, but there's all these crooks involved. So if I just exposed the crooks that are entrenched in this bureaucracy, then we can straighten the whole thing out because I'm like the white knight. Mm-hmm. It's like, bro, you're a foreigner here, don't just assume that you can come in here and change everything. And granted, I know that the stuff that they were doing was wrong. There's no question, the cronyism, it was so bad. And I mean, it probably still is. I'm not a huge government person. But him thinking that, I'm Bill Browder, I can just come in here and show people how fucked up this is, and they're going to do it. It's like, buddy, you're coming into a country that's, thousands of years, a culture that's thousands of years old, and you think that you're just going to, like, expose things because, you're super smart? I don't know. It was a little much, so.
He made it sound like it was altruistic, but really it was just...
Yeah, and I think that was my big thing. It was like, I'm doing this to help, but it's like, no, you're doing it for yourself.
The Sergey stuff, I do think was...
I was going to say, this is before Sergey.
Yeah,
when
right.
He was just like, I'm going to, expose all this stuff. It's like, you're doing it for your fund. You're doing it... And, I mean, you knew the risks. You knew the risks at hand that bad, like, stuff could go really wrong.
It was... That's why it was built into the price of the share. Like, you know what I mean?
Like
that's why it made sense.
Murder wrong. You knew this could be bad. So... I do get why he has some guilt over the whole Sergey thing, because he really should.
Ouch. Did really like the Russian parable or story there. I forgot how it goes, but I think it was like a genie comes and they can have whatever you want, but your neighbor will get twice that. And so he's like, I'm going to cut one of my eyes then.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a story. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, talk about spite.
This whole book's just about spite, I think.
Yeah. Bite your nose to spite your face. No, bite my nose to rip my neighbor's face off.
Yeah.
Cool. The only thing, and I'll say it again, was just Billy B talking about whining and dining his second wife. He was like, so we went to this restaurant, and then we went here, and then we flew
the giraffe?
Here, and then we went to this hotel that had ceilings of Louis IV. It's like, bro, we're 12 hours into this book. Like, I don't give a fuck. He spent 25 minutes talking about all the stuff he did to wine and dine his second wife that had nothing to do with the story itself. We get it. Okay, let's just get into casting the movie. This could be a movie, for sure. I don't think the rights have been taken. It's kind of like a James Bondy type thing, except with like a nerd. Hence, actually, why I'm going with Bill Browder. You know, the actor I'm going with for him is Ben Affleck, because he did The Accountant. He did The Accountant movie.
Yeah, and Argo.
And, yeah, sure, and Argo. So it's like a mix between The Accountant and Argo. He's a good-looking guy, fits the right age type, you know, big, strong guy. I believe it as him being like the financial whiz, but also willing to strong-arm Vladimir Putin.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, I only casted one person, but I did Tommy Hanks. I foreshadowed it earlier.
Oh, okay.
I think him without the Russian accent would be good. I just feel like Tommy Hanks plays this type of role really well. I also think that the key would be having, what's his name as the writer there? Who's the Social Network writer? Sorkin. Because Sorkin, I feel like, crushes these real stories. I mean, he did the Social Network. He did the Billy Bean one. Those two should not be entertaining in any way. But, like, he would make this dramatized to the max, you know?
Yeah, Social Network is one of the best movies I've seen this year. I've seen it before, but I watched it again, and fuck, that movie's so good. So is Moneyball.
Yeah, although I have a big argument about Moneyball with my roommate, because they end that movie with them being like, they went on a 26-game winning streak, which is equivalent to winning 5 World Series. They made it sound like they've never won a World Series with that principle. Your goal is to win the World Series. There's teams that have had lower salary caps that have done it before them and after them. You kind of romanticize something that really hasn't been that successful. It matters most.
At the end of the day, it just matters if you win the series.
If you're an A's fan, are you really that happy that, you know, oh, we've done really well in the regular season for a long time?
It's a zero-sum game, Keith, okay?
Thank you. Good use. I don't know if that works, but...
The only other people I had for casting was, I think, Elena. We could cast her. Elena Molokova, his second wife. I'm going to say it has to be someone that has at least somewhat of a decent Russian accent. So, Elizabeth Olsen, you are out. Whatever you did for the Marvel Universe was a sham and sadness. I was so happy in WandaVision when she didn't have that accent. It was wonderful, because I don't know what that thing was, but get it out of here. And so for some reason, I was thinking about why I like this person, but Famke Janssen, I'm butchering her name, but you'd know her. She's in Rounders. She played Jean Grey in the original X-Men movie, The Faculty. And I was like, I feel like she's done a Russian accent before, and it was in GoldenEye. I was like, oh.
Oh, right. Yeah, she's the one that kills people with their thighs.
Yeah, something Alexei Antapa or something.
She's got a regal neck, too.
Definitely a regal neck. That was my number one thing. She's got a regal neck. We get a little powder on the skin, make her porcelain.
Yeah.
But then I was wondering, like, why did I think about her? And it was really because the person I really wanted in this movie was Alan Cumming, who plays Boris from GoldenEye. I want him to be any Russian character that's in this. I don't care.
Yeah.
Maybe the Kalichnikov. I mean, that's obviously not his name. But whoever the main bad guy kind of was, the guy who was leading that police unit or whatever, he had a K name. Kornikovy, something like that. But he could play any one of the bad guys in this. He could even play just a goon. But I just want his crazy Boris-ness and the accent back because it was so good. And I'm sorry, I don't know other Russian actors.
You've got mail.
Charlie from New Freedom, Pennsylvania.
Chaz, what's up, man?
I was looking at our statistics. We have a lot of New Freedom, Pennsylvania listeners. So I assume that's from Charlie's been listening.
You know, only thing better than freedom is New Freedom.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. So where do you stand on Russia now? On the one hand, it's corrupt, freezing, and I want to make a footnote here. Shout out to City of Thieves episode. We talked about this as well there. And you can get in prison and tortured at any time. On the other hand, Russian models apparently just throw themselves at Easterners, and it's seemingly pretty easy to invest there.
I think you mean Westerners.
Oh, yeah. Come on, Charlie. I think I read that wrong. He didn't write it wrong. Westerners. And seemingly pretty easy to invest there. So, I think you might have already touched on this, but where do you stand on Russia?
I'm good. I'm good on Russia. But hard pass for me.
Hard pass. Okay.
Yeah. It's just, there's nothing that really makes me want to go to Russia. It's super far. The food, not super great. Not super great. Although I do love a good stew, and I feel like they're stew people. But outside of that, it's nothing. The language is very confusing. And truthfully, I go on Reddit a lot, and I see Russians crashing into people in cars and like being really crazy and like hating on gay people. So it's just not some place that I'm excited to go to.
Yeah, I hear you. I would probably, the more you talk about it, the more I agree. I think I would love to do business there and visit the people there, but I'd have to be at my 5-star hotel off the coast of Greece. I think then I would really appreciate it.
As long as you blogged about it, or at least told everyone about all the nice places you're staying, it'd be worth it.
All right, would you recommend this book?
I would, but I would have a caveat. I would say this is a fun book if you're into like financial stuff, especially if you're into Eastern Europe, that kind of stuff, or true stories along those lines. I would say definitely listen to the first third. Once it starts to break down a little bit in terms of their fund breaking down, I would then just go Wikipedia Sergei Magnitsky and just read his Wikipedia page, which I'm sure is better than whatever Bill put out there.
Ouch. Jesus.
And, respect that side of the story. But it just really dragged. Like, it was really hard to get through that part. It was a lot of like, Bill, we have trouble here. This, that, and the other thing is, okay, we got the main story. Just let us know all the fun stuff you did to get the Magnitsky Act done, which is, applaudable. Very well done. But the first third of the book, I really enjoyed.
I agree. I mean, I'd recommend it too. I think the same thing. I'm used to reading fiction, so I think from a pacing perspective, it definitely slowed. Kind of a slug to get through the last third, agreed. I think it was a great story, though. It was an interesting story, and, I'm glad I read it. The further you get away from, the more you're like, oh, yeah, that was a good book to read,
I'm glad we read it. Thanks for the recommendation. I'm not sure who sent it to us, but thanks for the recommendation. I'm definitely glad we kind of switched up a little bit. Now that, summer beach read season's over, Russia, cold, we're getting the fall here. Why not? Well, next up is The Song of Achilles. I've just heard really good things. This was not a recommendation. Well, I guess it was a recommendation from somebody. But I've heard good things, and I have a weird thing for mythology.
Awesome, yeah. Looking forward to it.
Thanks for checking us out. Check us out at buddybookclub.com. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye now.